Welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm interviewing a fellow Spurs content creator who's really making waves across the community, particularly when it comes to his tactical analysis and his strong views on Thomas Frank's up until the FC Copenhagen game anyway, pragmatic use of the players at his disposal. I really wanted to get him onto the podcast to chat all things Frank, Spurs, and his journey to becoming a big name in the Tottenham creator space. So please welcome Kish from Lily White Lab. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Much better after last night, of course.
That's right. We're recording
Yeah,
this on Wednesday lunchtime, so we're basking in the glow of the 4-0 victory. Before we go into it, I just need to say to all those people, just in case you haven't got eyes, we do have a new sponsor, okjersey.com. They sell the best current and retro shirts around at great prices. So just scan the QR code on the left and use the code BARN in the coupon box for a massive 8% off. But yeah, Kish, let's start with the Copenhagen game. I feel from watching a little bit of your stuff and seeing some of your tweets that maybe it was a bit of a relief last night.
yeah, much improved. Obviously, you got a caveat by the opposition were very poor, but I think just in terms of principles and kind of the freedom that was given to the players has been much better than what we've seen previously. I think you can talk about kind of structures and tactics all day, but I think there's so much to be said about just allowing players to move and create solutions themselves on the pitch. I think there's times where you need to be more rigid, maybe against big opposition, but there's also been games this season where I felt we're too rigid against opposition that we shouldn't be kind of turning these games into 50-50s against. I think of Leeds, I think of Wolves, think of Bournemouth. I think they're games where we should be able to kind of dominate in the opposition half, and we haven't. And so I think yesterday was refreshing to see that, okay, against lower opposition, we can kind of take the foot off the brake a little bit and allow those players to kind of show how good they are, because I think the squad is really underrated, both within the fan base and more generally. Obviously, there's a lot of young players in there who are still developing, still learning, but there's a lot of technical ability in the squad if harnessed correctly.
So difficult question, because we're not going to have any evidence to back this up, but your opinion. Do you think Thomas Frank took the handbrake off a little bit in terms of the three-man midfield yesterday because he felt it was the right time, and that's his example of, as he always says, adding layers? Or do you think he probably took kind of listened to what was being asked of him in the press conferences, and maybe even some of his staff might have read some of the Spurs social media?
I think if you just look at that game objectively against Chelsea, there was cause for concern. There has to be. I mean, if you don't put up more than 0.05 xg at home, that's alarm bells. So of course, I think the pressure can always kind of force a change quicker, but I also think his team would have looked at that game and thought, okay, this can't be a theme that we're kind of continuing with. I think it's a nice game for him to kind of try and be a bit more free, with obviously lesser opposition. Thankfully, Udogie and Odobert and Romero were all back, which was massive for, I think, how we played. So yeah, I think there's a few factors that go into it, but I'm sure they all kind of had their own kind of input on what we saw.
I'm really glad you mentioned that kind of triumvirate on the left-hand side of Udogie, Odobert, and then also Xavi Simons coming in to help them. And at times also, for me, Kolo Muani kind of coming in and getting involved as well. Can you see any particular reason why they are kind of building chemistry and building partnerships where it seems more like, and I'm taking Kudus out of this, he was injured yesterday, but take Kudus out of it, it doesn't really seem like Porro and Johnson, for instance, on the right, and they've played a lot of games together, have ever had anything as exciting to the eye for me in all the time they've been playing on the right, as I've seen in just the very small amount of time I've seen those three on the left?
Yes, I think what I've been big on, especially Odobert for, but of course Simons, is that these are technical, very highly intelligent technical players who work so well when they've got players around them to work off and play off. Kudus is an excellent player, but you can give Kudus 40 yards of space with no one around him and he'll still make things work. Whereas some players need players around them in close proximity that they can rotate with, that they can kind of combine with. And I think there's such a nice dynamic of, one thing I was really interested by as well yesterday is that at times Odegaard was kind of coming narrow as sort of a second 10, but there was also times where he held the width and Udogie was more narrow. And you see this from the best teams in the world. Like if you see PSG at times, there's times where Nuno Mendes is coming short and coming narrow, and Desiree Doué or whoever it is on the left is keeping the width. And then there's obviously times where they're more narrow, and you get that kind of relationship when you're of a certain technical and tactical level, but two, when you develop good relationships on the pitch. And I think there's so much to be said about those dynamics. The more you kind of play with a certain player, the more that you understand how they play. And so I think Udogie and Odegaard clearly have such a nice understanding there. I think Xavi Simons, especially when he's in this kind of lower phase of confidence, I think that is the kind of thing that's going to get him confidence again, because you're getting him more touches on the ball. And every time he plays a good 5-yard pass and moves, slight boost in his confidence, gets the ball back. And those kind of repetitions that you get when you get more kind of opportunities on the ball are going to improve his confidence. And then Kolo Muani, I think the technical level between him and Richarlison is night and day.
Yeah, agreed.
I've thought since I've seen him, I was happy with the signing before it happened, but I think just seeing him, you see his touch is so good. Obviously, the chances yesterday were missed, but I think goals will come for a player like that because he's so. Yeah. Well, his movement was great, but also his link-up play and stuff was fantastic. So I think those four, I think that's a really nice kind of attacking quartet, I guess, to build around, and hopefully they can all stay fit, because I think that's something that you can really lean into in terms of that dynamic.
Yeah, and talking about fitness is another difficult question to answer, I think. But do you think we would have played as badly against Chelsea had Romero and Udogie been available and we had that balance on the left? For me, a lot of the issues, take away, obviously, Thomas Frank's natural pragmatism, but a lot of the issues have been caused from a lack of balance and just the ease with which opposition teams have been able to press Jed Spence onto his wrong side and backwards and putting us in that trouble. How much of it do you put down to kind of, the injuries that Frank is having to deal with compared to his pragmatism as an example?
Yeah, so I think it's sort of a chicken and egg situation. I think there's more creative solutions that could have been used, and it's fine if you don't have your first team players. And I think this is probably the system that Frank wants to play. We saw it in pre-season where we were having kind of Porro sitting deeper to form that three, and then we had Udogie before he got that injury being nice and wide. Where I think I've been kind of a bit disappointed is that we've then gone to this very basic system rather than kind of trying to find other solutions. My kind of thinking as well with someone like Jed Spence, fine, he's not going to do the width and stuff that Udogie provides, but fine, let's get him narrower, and then let's have a winger who's able to stay out on the touchline. I think Odegaard is comfortable doing that. While he might not be elite 1v1, he's comfortable in all areas of the pitch. You get him to keep the width. Whereas if you pair someone like Spence with Xavi Simons, that is a recipe for disaster, because they're both going to come inside. There's going to be no width. It's going to look clunky. Whereas Spence, if he is going to cut inside, that angle to play out to someone who's wider is much more favorable. So I think there's been personnel issues, but there's also been a lack of kind of creativity in the solutions within that. Obviously, we can speak about the pivots for days, because I think obviously that's again, chicken and egg situation, whereas they're not very progressive players anyway, but I think they're also being restricted by the system. We saw how much better Bentancur was last night. So yeah, I think there's a lot of chicken and egg discussions to be had around Spurs at the moment.
Yeah, I feel like almost last night's result has put Thomas Frank in a bit of a bind, because obviously it's Manchester United at home on Saturday morning. I think anybody who's watched Ruben Amorim's Manchester United, and frankly Man United for the last 5 to 10 years, knows that one of the best ways to beat them, as we did in the Europa League final, is just stodge it up and let them kind of annoy themselves and then nick a goal. And so Thomas Frank will, I'm sure, be very tempted to go back to Palhinha and Bentancur, and maybe that's kind of almost what I'm thinking he will do. Is there a chance, if he does that the balance of then hopefully Udogie being fit on the left and maybe playing Odegaard on the left as well will still allow us to be more free-flowing whilst trying to stodge it up down the middle? Or do you think Frank, in this bind right now, will go, well, we played so well, against Copenhagen, that I'm going to stick to the same team and go at them and hope. Because actually, I've kind of changed from last night, my opinion. Having watched a lot of your stuff and seeing a lot of kind of Ben Bowman stuff as well about Polina and Bentancur, I've a little bit been like, but every time he's taken one of those off in each game, pretty much, we've lost any kind of shape or balance we had. So I've been fearful of that. But now after last night, and people who watched my video last night and this morning will know this, I'm like, actually, if we're going to lose those home games anyway, trying to stodge it up like we did against Bournemouth, like we did against Chelsea, like we should have done against Wolves, then we might as well play on the front foot, get the crowd behind us and try and use them as the 12th man and hope to outscore them. But am I now getting sucked into what is in essence what we were trying to do in the last 2 seasons as well? It's a difficult one.
Yeah, I think there's a middle ground to be found there. I think I kind of shifted my views of the pivot as well as I've watched more, and even being at the stadium and realizing that actually the pivots they're not even looking forward. So it must be instruction that they're constantly there to recycle possession rather than look for anything progressive.
Bentancur definitely was more progressive last night in terms of looking forward
100%.
and with his passing and with taking the ball on the half turn.
100%. And so I think, yeah, there's something to definitely be said that Udogie and Odobert, that dynamic just enables us to be more threatening on that flank anyway. And that maybe he'll use the Bentancur Polina pivot. The thing is that I think we don't have a progressive passer in midfield anyway. We have players who are much more progressive than Polina is, and at times Bentancur is, but there's no kind of set solution there. But I think for me, it's more about the intent at the moment rather than the personnel, because there's no set kind of replacement for, we don't have an Adam Morton or someone like that. But what I really like is the dynamics that we're seeing with Porro dropping deeper, getting them off the same line. There's been so many times where our fullbacks and our pivots are on the exact same line, and that just doesn't facilitate anything. So much of it's been sideways and backwards. And then against Chelsea, they really just hampered our playing out totally. Every time we went long, they hoovered it up. We didn't have anything around that. So we didn't get, sometimes we saw when we went long against Man City early in the season, Sarr would hoover up all those second balls. We didn't even get out enough to be able to do that. And when your kind of lack of positivity and progression in build-up is then causing you to give turnovers away, and actually João Pedro should have scored in the first half an hour from us kind of being so negative in possession, then you have to question the decision to do that. It's a difficult one. I think if this was away from home, I think I'd expect Frank to be more pragmatic again, but I think there's something to say that he needs to start getting Premier League performances in at home, because the crowd is not, it's such a big thing in football, the mood and the crowd and the feel around the club. And if you're at home and you're not putting on a bit of a show, and not creating chances, then the crowd are going to turn very quickly. So I think he'll be stuck between two. For me, I'd go unchanged, and barring if Kudus is back, I'd bring Kudus in on the right, but I'd go unchanged. And I think that is also a kind of a reward to the players who played very well. But it's also a message to the fans that was the right kind of performance last night. So we'll see, I guess.
Okay, before I go on to ask you a few more questions, I'm just going to allow everyone to hear from our sponsors for a minute. Get yourself to okjersey.com, where you can buy the best football shirts around, including this one I'm wearing now, and of course, the absolutely magnificent black Spurs away shirt. And as if that wasn't enough, if you go onto their website and like the look of one of the shirts there, choose your size, pick the Champions League badge for the sleeve as well if you're that way inclined, then go to checkout and type the code BARN into the coupon section. That's BARN as in short for Barnaby. And when you do, you'll get a whopping 8% off your purchase. Now, I'm no mathematician, but 8% means if you've spent, say, and let's face it, I'm being optimistic here, 100 quid, then you get £8 off, not to be sniffed at. Get yourself to okjersey.com to pick one up, or if you're too lazy to type in the website, just scan the QR code that's on the left of me throughout this video. So you, like I said, you've been quite forthright about the style that Thomas Frank's been setting us up in so far, certainly before the Copenhagen game. I just wanted to know whether on a kind of bigger picture front, where do you feel you are with Thomas Frank as the Tottenham manager? Do you see enough kind of green shoots in terms of him potentially creating a longer term Tottenham Pochettino-esque legacy?
I think there's been a lot of discussion about kind of him deploying this sort the defense out first and then come on to the attack later. And I don't know if I agree with that, because I think there's no way in football you can sort the defense without sorting the attack. These things work in tandem, right? If you go and win the ball and that's your defensive style, then what's your attacking style? Now you've got the ball. And I don't think managers really work like that. I can't really remember a manager that's kind of set a certain style early on, and then suddenly things have completely shifted and they've developed this really attacking style. It's quite rare to see that. I think what will happen is players will come back, and I think Thomas Frank is someone that adapts to players. So I think with the kind of increased quality, hopefully we'll see better situations because we'll have the players to help us do certain things. I think where he doesn't have personnel is where he becomes more risk averse, and that's fair. But when you're being risk averse and it's not really paying off, is where you kind of have to question it a little bit. I'm nowhere near kind of being Frank out. I was really kind of disappointed with the fact that I felt like my kind of initial thoughts, and I wanted Frank, was that he was going to come in from Brentford and his style was going to kind of be very different from Brentford. Whereas I think what he's actually done has been very just copy and paste. And I think what people need to understand is people say, yeah, but Brentford scored all these goals and Brentford were an attacking team. I mean, what happened with Brentford is that teams are never going to go and sit off Brentford. They're going to go and press them. That leaves spaces in behind, which is a Thomas Frank dream. He can play those channel balls. He had Wissa, he had Mbeumo, he had Tony at times to win knockdowns. And those spaces opened up. And then you saw some really nice moments in attacking play, like you would if we had that at Spurs. But what's different about when you come to a big club is the expectation and the respect that the opposition show you. So they're going to sit off you. Now what do you do? How are you going to break them down? And obviously teams have pressed us and stuff. But I just think that he's been too kind of copy and paste-ish from Brentford so far, and it's a different ball game over here. You can't just do what you did at Brentford here. Is my kind of concern.
Brentford did play lovely stuff when he first joined in the Championship, though, didn't they? They got up playing a much more handsome style of play, if you like. So is that kind of in keeping with when he's talking about the layers? I don't disagree with you, actually, in terms of I do think it's almost like I think basically when he says, oh, I'm trying to sort the defense out and then I'll add the layers, what he's saying is we're not going to come 17th and, you're just going to have to deal with that for a little bit and be patient. Is there a chance him talking about the kind of adding layers is his kind of, he's talked as well about, everything I'm doing is for the long term. Is that kind of what he will end up trying to get towards? Is a better style of play akin to what he played at Brentford in the Championship, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, I don't doubt that's what he wants to do. I just think in the modern game, managers don't get this time that they always think, yeah, we're thinking for the long term. We're thinking for the long term. But to be honest, if he went, although
we don't know with Vinay.
Well, yeah, of course, but I mean, we always hear that from managers, and it's like, well, fair enough if that was 20 years ago, but you have to get everything right straight away, especially in the Premier League where like every game is now so competitive. I am someone who's always very attack first and kind of I want to see free flowing football, but I also
Does that mean you were sad when Ange got the bullet? How did you feel about that?
No, not at all, because I think for me with Ange, I wasn't seeing those attacking patterns towards the end. So it wasn't like there was something really to hold on to. I mean, we won the Europa League not playing anything like what he wanted to play. And then in the league, we didn't see any of that. And so, no, I wasn't. But I think that's the thing. I think people think there's like this. You asked this, you wanted Ange gone, you wanted defensive football. It's like, no, there's a balance to be found. There's managers that have a good defensive structure, but are also play really nice football. And hopefully Frank can get to that point. Yesterday's game is a real hope. I liked the Newcastle performance. I know a lot of people didn't, but I thought there was some good signs in that Newcastle performance, but we were let down by certain personnel. So there are some hopes there. I think the Chelsea game, I was kind of starting to feel a bit more hopeful. And in the Chelsea game, he kind of reverted back to what we'd been seeing. So hopefully that's like a lesson learned, and hopefully he'll stick with this more 3-2 build-up shape, more progressive style.
Yeah.
rather than the much more rigid kind of set in stone way of playing.
One of the fears I have actually, just thinking about it as you're talking, is almost like the reaction of the crowd an hour before the game, even though, you know, they're just in the concourse, is if he picks Polina and Bentancur against Man United, and them just being like, oh, he's gone back to and actually that kind of almost sucking the oxygen out of the momentum we might have gained from last night, when actually I think if he does, like I mentioned earlier, I think if he does pick Polina and Bentancur, it's still possible with Udogie playing and Odebear that we can still, you know, we can still show more, but almost like it's a risk to take that decision because the crowd, who maybe won't understand or think that, might, you know, start the first 50 minutes of the game being like, oh, here we go again.
100%. Yeah, and I think that's why I'm so big on, of course, personnel matters 100%. But if I see that pivot again, I won't judge it until I see how it's being deployed.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it puts a lot of pressure on Bentancur if you stick Polina next to him, especially at home, because Polina basically is asked to stay out the way of build up. I've watched so much footage now of Spurs that he generally doesn't get involved. Because Frank knows what kind of player he is. So it is pretty much Bentancur on his own in there to get the ball to our attacking players. But if you have kind of Porro sitting in that deeper role, you obviously have Romero there. They can pick passes. At times, they're going to be able to skip out the midfield because they're that good on the ball. And Romero, we saw a couple times yesterday of him play directly into the striker's feet from centre back, and so that is obviously a source of progression. I think
thought Sarr, sorry to interrupt, but I thought Sarr actually yesterday looked braver than usual. He was coming a bit deeper. I was frustrated kind of whilst doing the game. I was like, you can see with Sarr is like he's not willing to try and take the ball like with his body side on. He's almost a bit too panicky to do that yet. And those best players, the likes of Wharton, who I think is almost as similar as you can get to Michael Carrick from back in the day, just taking the ball literally almost facing the other way. And Pap really needs to learn that. But I thought he was braver last night. There's something weird though about Pap. I know he's still young, so I'm not judging him for it really, but there's something weird about him and almost like the simplest things of the game. Like sometimes his technique over 5 and 10 yard passes and stuff. But I do still think he's an incredible talent.
100%. I think that kind of refinement comes from games. Games. More brave.
But that's chicken and the egg as well, isn't it? Because you can see why the coach is like, well, he's going to give away a 5-yard ball, so I'm not going to pick him. But he needs that to get rhythm and stuff.
Yeah. I think there's also so much to be said about the way we set up in terms of yesterday with Porro playing that more reserve role. That allows midfielders to be able to take it on the half turn so much better because they don't have to be standing square because the angle's there, more diagonal pass rather than a straight pass. And I think that makes such a difference. I think you can talk about shapes all you want and you can talk about kind of structures and whatever, but if you just give kind of players the autonomy to be able to move off of their position and create that angle and not be so stuck on kind of porous, stuck on the line, just playing that channel ball, that creates those favorable angles. And these players are elite players. They're not, obviously some of them more elite than others, but they're Premier League players. They obviously know how to create an angle. They obviously know what pass is going to be more optimal to give someone a better chance of being able to then turn and play. So it's more about, I think, giving some of these players a bit more freedom, being a bit less risk averse, to kind of being so big on your structure when you have the ball, because if you lose the ball, you're terrified of what's going to happen. You have to be a bit braver on the ball and allow players to kind of move around a bit more.
And you mentioned earlier how Frank is tempted to be more pragmatic when he's got less player options. In terms of looking forward at January and the summer, where do you think the recruitment team are going to be looking first? Because the more I see how improved we are when Udogie comes back in the team, the more I'm like, I think another left back is probably where we need to look first.
100%. And that feels like a deal that could get done in January as well, because it's not necessarily a starter left back. It's a left back who can provide width, left-footed, physically capable, and then obviously a certain technical level. I think like there was a lot of people saying they wanted Anthony Robinson in the summer, and I was kind of against that then. But I think for now, from what I'm seeing from Udogie, I know he's been injured, but that he'd be a perfect kind of understudy to Udogie for that. I've
really liked Anthony Robinson for years, but every time he crops up, there's some people who I respect in the Spurs community. I think like Nathan from the Extra Inch and stuff, who are like, oh no, he's not what we need. What do you think?
I think he's quite basic. So you
Is he
you
like the
lose.
equivalent of when we got Paul Konchesky in the early 2000s?
See, I'm too young for that because I would have been
He
sick.
was basic. He was like, he did really brilliantly at Charlton, and then he came in, I think, on a free, and we were like, oh, this guy is meat and potatoes.
Yeah, as in like Robinson, physically amazing, good cross on him. That's about it. But that role, I mean, that is a fair set of attributes for that role.
Yeah.
It probably allows you. It probably stops you from being as flexible as you can with Udogie, where at times Udogie comes a bit more central, and you're not going to find Anthony Robinson doing that.
Yeah.
But obviously, as an understudy, that kind of player makes sense. I think left back's the first one that we need to get done, and that's something that could definitely be done in January. Away from that, I think obviously the progressive passer in midfield. I mean, it's been talked about for days, but that is the key next summer. We obviously have to assess the striker situation, where they're all at. I think that is one that you wait until summer because you don't know.
Do you rate Solanke when he's fit? I rate him highly as a hold up and link up man.
I rate him. Yeah, I really rate him. I don't think he's sort of at a world class level or anything like that. I think he'd really thrive in with the players that we've got in over the summer in terms of Kudus and Simmons. And I think his goal scoring would improve with those players around him. I think Kolo Muani is probably going to end up being the most rounded of the strikers because he has, I think, more goal scoring potential than Solanke, but also has that link play as well. I think he probably doesn't quite have the same level of hold-up player as Solanke, but you're probably going to get more goals from him. I think those two are very good options to have. I'd ship off Richarlison, and then elsewhere, I mean, I think we're pretty good. Barring that, there's key pieces that are missing.
Yeah.
But I think the progressive passer midfield, I'd go massive on that. That's what I'd prioritize. Whether there's not many out there, so whether that's going to cost 80 million or more, I'd do that one.
It feels like the right time to ask you then where you are or what your instinct is on the Lewis family, the change / not change of ownership, the new communication, which I think we can all agree has been a lot better. I think Vinay has definitely improved that. I've just saw before actually we started recording that Tottenham have lowered the category from A to B in terms of ticket prices for the Borussia Dortmund game, which strikes me as something that would not have happened under Daniel Levy. Is there any instinct in you, and actually you saying just how much younger you are than me, I think maybe gives you a better chance of having a positive feeling on this. Is there any instinct that there actually could be a genuine change in how we go about transfer policy in terms of being willing to pay more wages and making the kind of big money signing we would need to make to actually, I think basically we're saying, do you think they would go, well, if we have to pay 90 million for Adam Wharton, we're going to slap it down?
I want to say no, because I just don't know anything different from Tottenham. And when it's not fresh ownership.
So your age makes no difference. We're all the same.
But like, it's one of those where the first window is going to be, everyone's going to be judging them. So maybe they do go big on it.
Maybe they have to. That's what I think. I think they kind of have to, because otherwise, afterwards, especially if there's a bad run of games afterwards, the change for Tottenham boys will organise another protest. And it won't be Levy out this time. It'll solely be ENIC out, because they are still ENIC.
They have to separate themselves.
Yeah, they have to. Weirdly, yeah. Be interesting.
In terms of the category change in prices, I think it was quite empty yesterday, from what I understand. The prices are insane. I have a season ticket, so but I hear that the kind of individual ticket prices for category 1 games are like 90 quid or something. So I think when the product of football is like it was against Chelsea, that people are going to stop going. And I hear people around me saying, I'm not coming on Tuesday, like no chance I'm coming on Tuesday. So you can't have one without the other. If you're going to have high prices, you have to have high product, and we don't have that currently. So
another reason to spank 90 million on Adam Wharton, I'd say.
Exactly, 100%. I think someone like Adam Wharton is an absolute game changer. So
just before I let you go, I just wanted to ask a few questions about kind of what got you to where you are now in terms of content creation and stuff. Like, is it your full-time gig? Is it something you want to become your full-time gig? And what led you to this point?
Yeah, at the moment, I'm kind of on the journey to becoming full-time.
Right.
So I've got some kind of work, but not enough necessarily to carry me over. I started off by making videos on non-Spurs, just like on young up and coming footballers that I kind of predicted were going to go into kind of onto big things, and those videos did really well. And then I kind of
Was that on
snowballed it
TikTok?
from there.
What platform was
I
that?
was on TikTok originally, and also post them on Twitter. And then now, obviously, it's a lot of Spurs focused stuff, but I'm also doing a few just more general football stuff on TikTok as well. And then I'm doing a few things for different brands, and yeah, it's been really good. I'm really enjoying it. It's so much better when Spurs are doing well, because it's really hard to make videos when you're just being negative. I'm not a negative fan, but
No.
it's really. I also want to try and be. My thing is to try and be objective, so I don't want to just feed people what they want to hear. So yeah, it's a different way of supporting Spurs, that's for sure. But I'm loving it, and hopefully, yeah, I'll be able to go full time soon.
Oh, brilliant. Well, one of the reasons I wanted to get you on the channel is because you're definitely an authentic voice, and I don't really have interest in interviewing people on the channel who are, in my opinion, saying things they don't really believe to try and earn more money. So that's really good. Let my audience know where they can find your stuff, mate.
Yeah, so Lily White Lab, we're on YouTube. We're kind of trying to get to the next level, so that's the main one. So Lily White Lab on YouTube, but also TikTok, Twitter. We just hit 15K on Twitter, which was massive. We're also just started our Instagram, which is the Lily White Lab, because someone's taken Lily White Lab for some reason.
Bastards.
But yeah,
sue them.
That's everywhere. So yeah, please do go and check me out. And I'm going to have a Copenhagen review out today, actually. So please go and check that video out.
Fantastic, guys. Make sure you go and subscribe to Lily White Lab on YouTube and on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere they are. Kish, thanks so much for coming on. Let's do it again, mate. Really enjoyed talking to you. And yeah, guys, I hope you're enjoying the glow of, well, what will now be Thursday morning, because it's going to go out tomorrow morning. And then we got Man United Saturday at lunchtime. If we could win that one, obviously it's just before the international break, but we broke the hoodoo last time. If we can win that one, we could actually enjoy 2 weeks off. Let's see what happens. Come on, you Spurs. Get yourself to okjersey.com, where you can buy the best football shirts around, including this one I'm wearing now, and of course the absolutely magnificent black Spurs away shirt. And as if that wasn't enough, if you go onto their website and like the look of one of the shirts there, choose your size, pick the Champions League badge for the sleeve as well if you're that way inclined, then go to checkout and type the code BARN into the coupon section. That's BARN as in short for Barnaby. And when you do, you'll get a whopping 8% off your purchase. Now, I'm no mathematician, but 8% means if you've spent, say, and let's face it, I'm being optimistic here, 100 quid, then you get £8 off, not to be sniffed at. Get yourself to okjersey.com to pick one up, or if you're too lazy to type in the website, just scan the QR code,